to the EEAB special meeting, March 22, 12:03 p.m. This meeting is called to order. I will ask Angie if she will please call the roll for the executive board members.
Rabbi Cohen, Ms. Holland,
Present.
Reverend Lee,
Present.
Ms. Penn,
Present.
Mr. Rhodes, Dr. Downey,
Present.
Mr. Watson,
Present.
Councilmember Bespich,
Present.
Vice Mayor Whitevoid.
Present. Thank you, Angie. And at this time, I will ask our secretary, Mr. Bespich, if he will call the roll for our subcommittees. Bill, you're muted.
Sorry. When you grow up with a last name like Bespich, you know the importance of pronouncing people's names correctly. So if I mispronounce your name, please tell me. Patisse Holland is present. She already answered.
Sorry, present, yes.
Yeah, sorry. Mary Bishop.
Present.
Thank you. Grace Church.
Present.
Thank you. Courtney Craggett. Thought I saw her name. Courtney Craggett, are you present? David Harrison.
Present.
Mr. Bespich, she is on and she is muted. I will try to reach out to find out if she's having any trouble. Courtney Craggett.
Thank you. I thought I saw her name earlier. Robin Mitchell.
Present.
And Robin, I see I have your name, your first name misspelled on my sheet, so I'm going to correct that.
Thank you.
Shayon Baker. Shayon Baker, is she with us? Hey, Dr. Deneen Evans.
Present.
Javion Tucker. Javion with us. Aaron Washington.
Present.
Amazetta Anderson.
Present.
Alicia Grubb.
Present.
Ebony Harrington. Ebony, not with us. Bernard Johnson.
Present.
Thank you. Gloria Manns.
Present.
Rachel Rowland.
Present.
Lori Baker Lloyd. Lori Baker Lloyd. Phoenix Kesey.
Present.
Reverend Kathy O'Keefe.
Present.
Ahu Salem.
Present.
Katie Zawaki.
Present.
Angela, oh, it's Angela. Oh, sorry. John Camacho.
Present.
Marlene Hamlet. Tiffany Helm. And Courtney Smith.
Present.
Thank you, Courtney. That completes the roll call, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bespich. I appreciate it. First, I want to say welcome. I want to thank you guys for taking time out of a busy Monday. And because it is a busy Monday at noon, we are going to try to move through this meeting as expeditiously as we possibly can. We realize that this is a really busy time of the day. First, I want to thank the chairs who stepped up for these subcommittees. I really want you to know how much I appreciate you doing that. That is going to help us to move forward. All of the subcommittees have been established. And just I want to remind you that we had a lot of applicants And even in your subcommittees, if you feel that you need some additional help when you start working and start working on your projects, let me know, because we have a lot of folks who did not make the subcommittees who are willing to join you to help us get this work done. So I'm not going to belabor the point. I will turn it over to our city manager at this point to do an overview of the subcommittees. Mr. Cowell.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for your willingness to serve on these committees. This is an unusual meeting because it's a special meeting of the board, and the reason for that is because all of the board members serve on the committees as well. And so in order to bring all the committees together at one time, we have to conduct this as a special meeting of the board. So that's why a little bit of formality. This meeting is really the orientation meeting for the committees. After this, most of the committees will do their work independently, and we'll talk about that toward the end. This will be one of the times, and this may happen occasionally over the course of the year, where all the committees come together, all the members of the committees come together. So I wanted to spend a few moments kind of explaining what the EEAB is, the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board, and the role of the committees, and then kind of dig a little bit deeper into each of these. So very simply, at the high level, the county or the city council approved recently the city's comprehensive plan. In that comprehensive plan, one of the core tenets of the plan is what's something referred to as interwoven equity. And what that simply means is the intent of the city is to weave equity throughout all of its policies, whether those policies respond to economic development or infrastructure or land use or whatever those may be. So that is the genesis of this idea. Inside that plan, there was a call for the formation of some type of advisory committee, board, group, something, and the council responded to that by forming the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board and appointing its members, and of course is led by Vice Mayor Trish White Boyd, as well as Council Member Bill Bestfitch. And then of course you saw and heard the names of the other board members introduced. So it is a permanent standing committee or advisory board of the City Council, just like the Planning Commission is, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and so on. And its primary purpose is to advise the City Council on equity and empowerment issues. And we'll talk about a little bit more of what that means. Each of you have been selected to serve on a particular committee, and the committee is built around the 5 policy areas that are contained in the comprehensive plan section on the interwoven equity. And those are around the area of trust, break the cycle of poverty, neighborhood choice, inclusive culture, and service delivery. So those are the 5 priority areas that were defined within the comprehensive plan, and where the bulk of the work for the EEAB will be focused. And I think early on, the board realized, given the scope of those 5 priorities and the policies under each of those 5 priorities, this was obviously much more than what could be handled by just the members of the board. And that's why the interest in forming the committees as we go forward and actually trying to implement these items. This is a little bit unusual in that this board and these committees aren't starting from scratch. They're actually already starting with at the end, if you will, of a process that was multi-years in the undertaking and involved hundreds of contacts with citizens. And that was, again, the comprehensive plan. And so this is less about generating new ideas as much as it is about actually acting on the ideas that have been established as we go forward. And I want to kind of highlight a few of those because it's going to really make up the bulk of what you as committee members do. So Tiffany, if you wouldn't mind, if you'll go back up to the first, so right there on priority 1 with trust. So I'm going to use this as an example just to kind of highlight the work that each of the committees will be doing. So if I take this one priority area, trust, which is one of the committees, obviously, and you look at what the description in the comprehensive plan is for this particular priority, where it talks about overtly discriminatory policies of the past have largely been removed, there still is a responsibility for city government and its current leadership to regain trust following the trauma experienced by the African-American communities in our community. For the community to thrive as a whole, the city government must work to build trust through its actions. So for that particular section of the interwoven equity and that particular committee, if you will, that's kind of your charge. That's what these policies and actions that follow are intended to actually accomplish or achieve. And I believe each of you have been provided at least this level of information, and everything that I'm going through is available on the city's website, and we'll include that information and a follow-up to each of you as you go forward. But if I take that policy or that priority and I look at the first policy, so the first policy in that priority is to remove legal elements of institutional or structural bias. So inside that priority, the plan has laid out 3 different policies that can be and should be focused on. And if you'll click on that one, Tiffany, then inside each of those policies, there is a collection, and it will vary from 2 or 3 items up to as many as 6 or 7 items, but there are a collection of action items. So in this case, one of the policies in order to achieve that priority of trust is remove legal elements of institutional or structural basis or bias. So basically that is what legal elements, what ordinances, practices might the city have that continue to perpetuate inequities or disparities, and what steps are necessary to remove those. So if you look at the first action item, it is review and eliminate city codes and policies based on explicit or implicit biases and advocate for the same approach for state laws and policies. So that would be one of the actions. And if you imagine just in that action alone, let's just start with those first few words, review and eliminate city codes and policies. Well, city codes and policies number literally in the thousands. And so if you think about it, in order to achieve or advance on this particular action inside this policy, somebody needs to go through, there needs to be a process to go through as many of those policies as is practical and actually start identifying areas where there indeed may be bias built into those practices or those policies. And that's just one action item. If you look at the second action item, it's advocate for criminal justice reforms that address systemic and interrelated issues of our time, such as mass incarceration and so on as you go through those. And again, each one of these really begin to represent kind of the playbook, if you will, that's available to each of the committees. Obviously, when you start going through these, you'll realize this is literally years worth of work. And that's one of the reasons why this board is a permanent board. This is not a task force. This is not a blue ribbon panel. This is a permanent board present in the city council's sort of repertoire of boards. And I mean, that's the reason, because this is a long-term effort and initiative as we go through. So part of what each of these committees will do is obviously familiarize yourself with the priority that you have been assigned to, the policies that have been defined in the comprehensive plan, and the list of actions, and begin to kind of formulate sort of a prioritization around those actions. Because again, you can't take everything on all at one time. And I'll talk a little bit about that further as we go on with these. But I just wanted to sort of kind of illustrate just in this one priority what you have in terms of actions to work with and through as you go along. And Tiffany, would you mind going down to the second priority, which is break the cycle of poverty? I just want to reinforce this one more time and kind of show again. So if I look at this second priority, you know, a variety of factors affect people in poverty in ways that make it more difficult to break the cycle of poverty. This priority focuses on policies that provide pathways to upward mobility and remove the obstacles that get in the way of success. So I want to show how not only is this the work of the committee, but also how it interrelates to work of other boards and committees throughout the city, and even ultimately gets into some private sector areas. So if you would look at, Tiffany, if you would click on policy number 3. So this policy talks about providing schools that serve low and moderate income neighborhoods with additional programs and resources to enable students to perform on equal footing with students in other schools. And then there's a fairly lengthy explanation that clarifies that a bit more. And Tiffany, if you'd scroll down to where the action items are at the bottom of that list. Yep. So you've got in here, attract and retain highly qualified, diverse teachers who want to teach in an urban environment, including recruitment from historically Black colleges and universities. So this is one of those areas where obviously a committee has been established. to look at this kind of action in order to achieve on a certain policy and priority. And this committee will make recommendations to the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board, who in turn makes recommendations to City Council. Obviously, this action, though, relates directly to the conduct of the school board, as well as the school system itself. And so this is one of those areas where there may be ideas generated out of the committees that are presented to the school board through the City Council, through that chain. And that's just an example. You'll see this in several of these policy statements and action items, that the expectation is not there that everything is going to get focused on or addressed or even advised upon by just the committees, by just the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Boards, but also by many of the other city departments, as well as other boards that exist and commissions that exist that also report to the City Council. And so I just use that one as an example to give you a sense of the diversity of the kinds of actions that are present in each of these areas. I'm going to shift here for a second, and then I believe after this next part that I had done with, we'll open it up for discussion, see what questions you might have and what further clarity. But I'm not going to go through each of these. Obviously, I just wanted to illustrate those. Again, you've already been provided some of this information, and certainly will reinforce the linkage on the website so you can, as a member of your committee, dig deeper into each of these and start to begin processing what is expected out of each of these actions and start generating some ideas of your own, because under each of those actions, there's probably a dozen more specific things that could take place. I want to shift though and talk a little bit about the committee structure and the operation. Chairman White Boyd has already mentioned that each of the committees were appointed. There was a process, obviously, to secure applicants. Those applications were reviewed by the executive members, which consisted of the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. They made a recommendation of membership for the committees to the full board, and the full board, and along with that, they also made recommendations for chairs of each of the committees, and the full board voted on those at their last meeting. And that's how you ended up here, is you were selected by decision of that full board. So each committee is made up of somewhere around 5 to 7 folks. Each committee has at least one member of the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board as a member of the board. They are not necessarily the chair of the board. They're members, and in some cases the chair, in other cases they are merely members associated with the board. It is not necessary as long as each of those committees meet individually. So in other words, as long as we don't have a quorum of members of this board, it is not necessary that we post in the same way each of those agendas. However, keeping in mind kind of transparency, we will be posting both the agendas for the committees and also the minutes that come out of those committee meetings. They may not necessarily be broadcast live like we're doing with the advisory board, because remember, at the end of the day, you are an extension technically of the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board. It is not necessary, although it's certainly preferred, that there be a quorum of members present at each of those committee meetings. The reason why it's preferred is because obviously that will result in the most complete and robust conversation. You've been selected to serve on these committees in large part because of the diversity that you bring to the conversation and the influence and information that you possess. And so your participation is critical through the process as we go forward. At this point, there is no defined end date associated with these committees. As you see, there's a ton of work that lies ahead. I would anticipate that annually the board will revisit the committees for a couple of reasons. Obviously, people will come and go or need to come and go. And so there'll be some replacements necessary to be made. And there may be some other changes that would have to take place. I would anticipate some meeting like this, pulling all of the committee members together, at least annually, if not more often as well. You are at the end of the day as a committee, you're making recommendations to the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board. You're not actually taking any action. So those actions that I just showed you and mentioned, those are not things you're going to go out and do. Basically, you're generating ideas about how those things could be done and what might be necessary for the board as well as the city council or others to know in that work as it goes forward. As I mentioned, you're not starting from scratch. So this is not a case where you're going to assemble or go out into the community and say, what should we work on? You actually have a big list of what to work on. You will, however, be going out into the community, and it is essential to go out into the community, and especially to revisit those folks, as Chairman White Boyd mentioned, who have expressed interest in serving on this, but weren't able to be chosen for one reason or another. You will engage with them and the community to try to help with your other committee members to arrive at where your priority focus should be. Again, you can't do everything that's on that list, at least not initially. So you're going to want to figure out of those lists, out of those possible actions and priorities, which are the most important to start work on. You're going to start that with a conversation inside your committee. Then you're going to move out into the community and get some information from them so that you can help kind of refine that committee thinking on that area. City staff will be present at each of the committee meetings to help you along the way. We also would like you to view the city staff as a resource. So for example, if you're talking about, you want to talk about an action that has something to do with economic development, we would certainly encourage you to have our economic development staff as a part of that conversation or meeting. If you're talking about something with schools, we would certainly hope that we would be able to bring someone in from the superintendent's office to kind of help in that conversation and on through the list of things. So not only will staff be present to help you, but also we hope you view staff as a resource as you do your work, as you go through those. And again, probably every meeting, the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board meets each month. And at every one of those meetings, there'll be a reporting out of the work of each of the committees. So most likely what will occur is the chair or someone appointed by the chair will be present at the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board meeting. And they'll provide, a few minutes of kind of updates on what they're working on, where they are, what might be coming up with the committee's work and so on. Periodically, there will be lengthier periods of time for those recommendations to be presented to the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board. Not all the committees will work on the same timeline. Some committees will be able to generate those actions probably faster, or those recommendations faster than others. And that's fine. Each committee will work at its own pace as we go forward. And I'll say that the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board is required by its bylaws once every quarter. So 4 times a year, there is a public hearing that they hold. And that public hearing is designed to hear directly from the community on topics that the board is working on. Those will very likely be opportunities where something each of the committees might be wrestling with, where they want to get a broader input from the community. We certainly can plug those into those public hearings. They're much more formal, perhaps, than what the engagement efforts might be with each of the committees, but it does give another opportunity to engage with the community or the public. So that was a lot. There's a lot out there on it, a lot to take in for the committees. I just really, at this stage, we wanted just to remind everyone of what we're trying to do and start introducing you to the magnitude of what you're taking on and the significance of what you're taking on. And at this point, Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you, and then maybe we can facilitate any kind of discussion or questions that folks might have about any of that information, about the function of the committees and their charge, or just any of those kinds of items. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cowell. You went through that pretty succinctly, and I think people, that information that Mr. Cowell just went over was actually mailed out to you around March 5th by Angela O'Brien. If you don't have it, it is so easy for us to send that back out. At least now when you get it, you'll know what you're looking at and what you're referring to. So I will ask Ms. O'Brien to send that back out. But speaking of resources, we also have our city attorney, Mr. Tim Spencer, who will help us with ordinances and codes and things like that. And also on our committee, we have Ms. Patisse Holland, who is she just can't wait to dive into this. And so we have plenty of resources. So I wanted to mention that. But the first thing that I would ask each chair of the subcommittees to do is to select a regular meeting date that works for your subcommittee. Select a regular meeting date. Also select a co-chair in the event, or someone that you can appoint, that in the event that you're not able to make the meeting, you don't have to try to figure out who will facilitate the meeting. That person you already know will be on standby. And also a recording secretary is imperative because you will need someone to record, document, so that you have information for your chair or designee to bring back to the full board. So those are things that I'm going to be asking that if you could work on right away to get that established and send that information to me, so I will have it, so I'll know when your subcommittees are meeting. Like Mr. Kyle said, this is a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of effort, but I want to reiterate the fact that we have a lot of people willing to help. So once you start digging and getting into some of the issues, let us know if you need someone and we'll figure out who would work best on what subcommittee. But there are a lot of people who are really anxious to jump in. Also, your direction will not only come from these action items, it will come from the public hearings that we just held. For example, the name of Lee Plaza, the name change for Lee Plaza just came up. That is something that we are going to also be addressing. Our very first meeting, we had a call from a young lady who was concerned about people with disabilities and service delivery for the city. So we will have to address that. So your shift may change based on some of these public hearings. And so a lot of you were in attendance for the last public hearing, but I would urge you, if at all possible, to attend the public hearing so you can hear from our residents yourself and understand what their concerns are. And we will try to help you feel what subcommittee should handle what area or what question or what complaint that it may be. We'll try to help you with that. But pretty much that was the only thing that I had. And at this point, I will open it up for any questions that you may have as a member of the full board or a subcommittee or chair. Do we have any questions? Is all crystal clear or all muddy as I'll get out?
Question.
Yes, Ms.
Hi.
Baker Lloyd.
Good afternoon. When is the next public hearing?
So it's every quarter, and we just had our public hearing, what was it, March?
Yeah, it was in March. So it will be June, I believe, will be our next one.
It will be June, and it will probably be what, that first Monday? Oh, no, not the first Monday.
First Thursday, right? Thursday.
First Thursday, yes.
Yep.
June 3rd. So probably be June 3rd. And so we haven't put those dates out there, but they may be out there. I haven't seen them because Angie and Mr. Kyle do a lot of work behind the scenes. So we may already have those scheduled on the calendar on the website. There's a ton of information on the website for this. We're going to call it the EEAB. If you missed the other meetings, that's a lot to say, the Equity and Empowerment Advisory Board. So we're just calling it the EEAB. So if you want to go to that website and take a look and kind of refresh, and you may have questions after you take a look, but to answer your question, Ms. Baker Lloyd, June 3rd would be the next one. And just for the record, it will be every quarter.
And I should mention for the committee members, one of the other tools that we will connect you with and that will help as you start to kind of build a framework on how to actually respond to some of those action items that are mentioned in there is we're drawing upon the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, or you'll hear us referred to as GARE, which is an organization which has been formed specifically to assist governments in working on addressing racial equity, as well as advancing opportunities for others. So there are some tools that are available through them that we will also be relying upon. That some of them are as basic as these are the kinds of questions you ask when you're looking at policy to determine whether or not there are baked in inequities, those types of things. So we'll make those resources available as we go forward in the work of the committees as well.
I think it's a good idea to go ahead and send that out again. We did send it out to the full board, but let's send that toolkit out. It's the GARE, like Mr. Kyle was referring to. It will probably make more sense now. So along with the each priority and the action items, we will ask Ms. O'Brien to also send out that GARE toolkit. And I see a hand from Miss Anderson. Miss Anderson,
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Vice Mayor. How are you and everyone?
good morning.
I want to know whether or not we can access, those of us that may have missed the public meeting, can we go online and access it from the website?
Yes,
Yeah.
you can. The minutes from the meetings and the recordings from those meetings
Thank
are
you.
available online. Yes.
And thank you, Miss Anderson, for that question. And Miss Rulon?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify the advisory board meets the first Thursday of every month with a public hearing every third meeting. Is that, I understand that correctly?
Pretty much
Thank
every
you.
quarter. Yes,
Thank you.
yes. And if you missed the last public hearing, it was very insightful. We had a lot of discussion about the name change for Lee Plaza. And then there were some other concerns, and that's what I mentioned earlier. We're going to get our charges from these public hearings in addition to all of these action items that we already have on there. So, you can kind of get together and like Mr. Kyle said, kind of put your priorities together as a committee and ask for help. We have plenty of it out there. A lot of people that want to help. Are there any questions? I did, Ms. Anderson, your hand is still up, but I know your question was answered. Are there any other questions?
And I think Chairman Whiteboyd, I think that as you mentioned, and this is for the chairs of the committees, if, we can probably, before we end this meeting today, if we can identify kind of a deadline of when they can provide, and I have a question to follow this up, but when they can provide Angie with the selected date and time, of the meetings that they're going, their regular scheduled meetings, because then she can kind of build that regular schedule so that we know, because we'll have to assign staff to those. The question I have, and I don't know the answer to this, is does everyone have everyone's contact information for each of the committees? Angie, do you know, have we, like, if you're on the committee of trust, do you have the contact information? Do they have the contact information for each of their fellow committee members?
Yes, I sent that out. Was it Friday?
Yes, you sent it out Friday to the chairs, I know. I'm not sure if the actual committee members got that.
So if the chairs can further disseminate that, okay, to their committee members.
Yeah, and do you think you want to say maybe like this time next Monday, we would want to have the selected kind of regular meeting times, dates, whatever of the committee members? Is that adequate?
I think a week, and this is directed completely to the chairs, but do you think you all can meet or just even do an email back and forth or something to come up with some dates and times for your regular meetings by Monday?
Yes, I think so. For my committee, I believe we could do that.
Okay, and okay.
And if they
Madam
will just
Chair,
once you know that, if you'll just provide that information to Angie, then Angie will collect it all together.
Yeah, and if you would send it to Angela O'Brien, who is going to be sending you this information. She's going to be sending you the toolkit, and she's also going to be sending you the priorities. And I would just say send them all so that the other committees will have an idea of what you're doing, even though it may not relate to your subcommittee. But just send them all, Ms. O'Brien, and we can talk about that. But when you email her your date and times, if you would copy me, that would be great. And I think our next meeting for the full board is there any other discussion before we move on to the last agenda item? Because I do want to be thoughtful of your time.
Trish, I would like to ask our chair if she would like to just do a doodle poll.
And
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, that's you got it, Ms. Penn. Okay, well, however you guys want to do it, I know that the chairs they all have the contact information, so they will be reaching out to you because we have given you guys kind of a deadline of Monday, so hopefully you can meet that deadline, because that would be really helpful for Mr. Cowell and his staff. But
Madam Chair, if I may, I see that some folks who were not here for the roll call of the board members and the committees have arrived, and I've noted that. I just want to make sure, do we have Ebony Harrington? Is Ebony Harrington present? Shayon Baker? Marlene Hamlet? for Tiffany Ham. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And you know, we want to call the roll at every meeting because we want to make sure that people are able to be involved. I know sometimes we have the desire and we volunteer, but we may not actually have the time. And so we want to, you know, kind of gauge if the people who are truly engaged and want to be a part of it. And I'm, like I said, you know, some people might have the desire and they thought they might have the time and they don't have the time. So if we find there's a committee member who is not actually able to attend, we will make sure that we find someone else to fill that role in that subcommittee. But our next meeting, if there aren't any more questions, our next meeting will be April the 1st. That is the full board meeting. We always encourage the members of the subcommittees to attend if you can, so that you know what's going on. Although your chair will probably keep you posted or keep you abreast of what's going on, it's always helpful to attend the meetings if you can. And those meetings are at 6:30. So the next meeting is April 1st, Thursday at 6:30.
And Chairman, that will be, for those that wish to, that will similarly be broadcast on Facebook Live. So you'll be able to view it that way. Or it's also, of course, on Zoom webinar. So people can join in either one of those. If you're just really going to view it, the best way is to just view it on Facebook Live. And it'll be recorded so that if you can't view it at that moment, it'll be up on the website so you can continue to view it afterwards.
Any more hands? Anybody else? Any questions? Again, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedule. Once you get that information, you probably will have additional questions. My number is on there. Please feel free to reach out to me, or you can reach out to Mr. Bestpitch. Look, Mr. Bestpitch, I volunteered you there. and email Mr. Cowell. Mr. Cowell is busy. We keep him really busy here on City Council, so he's busy. So I prefer that you reach out to me or Mr. Bestpitch, just because he's another member of council, and we pretty much have an idea of what's going on. So unless there's
another full-time job, so that's
right.
fine.
I know. And thank you so much for taking on another one with me. We just talked this morning, Bill, and I told Bill we're going to have a meeting daily now, so because we got so much going on. But I appreciate you guys, and like I said, once you get the information that Ms. O'Brien is going to be sending out, please reach out to me if you have any questions, because this is still all new to all of us. And Mr. Cowell did a very good job going through how it is attached to the interwoven equity plan. But there's going to be other things that come up during. You know, and in the process that we've got to kind of incorporate into our discussions, like Lee Plaza and the concern for service delivery, or it could be a complaint or anything. We just need to be prepared to deal with that. It is now 12:40, and I am going to adjourn this meeting unless there's one other question. That's it. Well, I will say that this meeting is adjourned at 12:40, and I will see most of you on April 1st, if not all of you, at 6:30.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.